Good afternoon. This is Ken here at the San Diego United Lodge of Theosophists. Just to get our meeting started today, we have a wonderful speaker on the sun, who is Kim Miller. So the reading for today is from the Jewel in the Lotus. It is the hymn to Aditya, and this is from the Ramayana. Salutations to the presiding deity of the eastern mountains and of the western mountain. Salutations to the Lord of stellar bodies and the Lord of day. Salutations to him that ordains victory in the quest for emancipation. Victory is associated with Jaya and prosperity with Jayabhadra. Salutations to him and his golden steeds, the thousand-rayed Lord. Salutations to Aditya. Salutations to the one who is relentless, the hero, the one who is fast-moving, and salutations to him who makes the lotus bloom, the omnipotent one who is ferocious. Salutations to the overlord of Brahma, Shiva, and Achyuta. Salutations to the powerful and intrinsic effulgence in the sun, illuminator and the devourer of all, with a form that is fierce like that of Rudra. Salutations to the transcendental Atma that dispels darkness, drives away all fear, the destroyer of obstacles. Salutations to the annihilator of the ungrateful and to the Lord that rules over all stellar bodies. Salutations to the Lord shining like molten gold. Salutations to the transcendental fire, the fire of supreme knowledge. Salutations to the architect of the universe. Salutations to the destroyer of darkness, and salutations to the effulgent sentience that is also the cosmic witness. Salutations to the Lord who destroys everything that was and creates all again. Salutations to him who by his rays consumes the waters, heats them up, and emits them again as rain. Salutations to the Lord who resides in the hearts of all beings, remaining awake even when they are asleep. He is the sacrificial fire and also the fruit enjoyed by its worshippers. The sun is verily the Lord of all actions in the cosmos. He is verily the Vedas, sacrifice ordained therein, and the fruits thereof. O Raghava, he who recites this hymn in times of peril, during affliction, while adrift in the wilderness, and when beset with fear, will not lose heart. Worship thou, O Raghava, this God of all gods, the almighty Lord of the cosmos, with one pointed devotion. Reciting his hymn thrice, you shall emerge victorious in battle. Thank you. All right, now Kim, take it away.
Thank you. I thought we'd begin with the Gayatri's invocation. Om, in all three worlds, terrestrial, astral, and celestial, may we meditate upon the splendor of that divine sun which illuminates all. May its golden light nourish our understanding and guide us on our journey to its sacred seat. Om. In that invocation, we're given the image of that divine sun who illuminates all. This is a level of reality that is beyond the physical sun that we're going to, that I will also present information on today. So I think it's helpful to remember the levels of reality here that Theosophy teaches us, that there is a terrestrial, astral, and celestial realm. And we together are on a journey to its sacred seat. So the seat of the hidden sun is invisible, it's ineffable, it's not describable, it's beyond all conception. But there are intimations we get of that real central hidden sun that we can be inspired by. lessons learned through science, through symbolism, through myths and cultural stories throughout the world. There's a lot that could be said about this topic, a huge amount. And what you're going to get is today more on the science element of it, but we can discuss, everybody I'm sure has great insights of other elements as well. So I'll do the best I can. Here we go. So, so here's a quote from The Secret Doctrine. Behind the physical sun stands the spiritual sun, the noumenon of the former, the true source of light, heat, and life, and the abode of the highest intelligences. And I just realized I need to share my screen. Otherwise, you don't see what I'm seeing. Okay, got share sound. So basically, the spiritual sun is the true source of light, heat, and life. And the highest intelligences abide in that spiritual sun. And we can only think that it's a sure mystery what spiritual intelligences abide in other suns in our universe. You know, our sun is one of countless other suns. And there are suns in our universe that are so different than our sun. If you imagine taking the mass of our Earth and condensing it, squishing it all together into the size of a VW Bug, Volkswagen, you know, those old cars, stuff all the Earth into that size. There are bodies in space so dense as that. Those are called neutron stars. And I mean, honestly, what kind of cosmic intelligences live in that on the secret inner planes? One can only revere and probably not try to speculate too much, but just to have some reverence for the mystery of what all of those different suns and black holes, neutron stars, white dwarfs, all of those different bodies in space could possibly mean. An example, this is a picture that appears in our book published by Conquer Grove Press in the very front. And it shows the levels of reality, in a sense, metaphysically. At the bottom is the realm of the objective or phenomenal world, which is one of illusion. And this is the level where the scientific understanding of what our sun is at. There is an invisible world, subjective, it's real, that's beyond that. But then notice that the source of that subjective world leads us back to Brahmavak, and beyond that, there is the absolute principle of Aditi, the AUM, that which has no name. There's a ineffable quality to this basic fundamental principle. It can't be described, and yet it is also the source of all of those invisible realms that then eventually lead us into the physical realm. This is also shown in Plato with the divided line. This image comes from Professor Raghavan Iyer's book of Parapolitics, where he took Plato's idea of the divided line and merged it into kind of a triangle at the top. There's a fusion of the process of knowing, the knower, and the known at the top. But notice there's this gap between the apex of our best pure vision of archetypes, the highest knowing we can do. There is still that which is beyond, the good, that is abstract. And we just wanted to remind ourselves of all of this, because when we discuss the sun, it's such a sacred topic that it's really good to remember that our best understandings are still incomplete. even if we think we have this intuition of understanding the cosmic divine light that surrounds the sun, that's good, but we shouldn't like grip onto it and say, oh yeah, okay, I got it, I know it all. There's always more. There's always more to it. So if we make a metaphor here or a correlation, the sun is like the abstract truth, the good. The physical sun causes matter to exist and energy to cycle, and that's sort of like this whole realm of being and becoming. This is where the levels of consciousness are varied and the forms are varied. This is the realm of being up here and becoming down here. But all of this has beyond it the abstract truth, the good. So the good illuminates ideas. Truth illuminates the realm of ideas. And so also the physical sun illuminates all around it in the solar system. HBB says the sun is neither a planet nor a body, but a reflection of the central spiritual sun, whose energy is poured forth into the visible universe. And here's another related quote, that it's the sun is the center of the vital force of our solar system. The visible sun is but a reflection, again, reflection of the central spiritual sun, the source of all life and consciousness. Now, what do we physically know about the physical sun? Through the process of the scientific method and hundreds of years of research, and following a logical process of experimentation, investigation, checking results for significance, this scientific method has been followed by thousands and thousands of researchers to come up with lots of really fascinating information about the sun, the physical sun, and we'll share what we can here. This is one of the observatories that's facing the sun at all times. And here it's got some images in various light waves of solar prominences and flares and dark spots. We know that there are cycles of the dark spots on the sunspots. There are areas of very great increased magnetic activity that actually look dark on the surface of the sun. And these cycle about every 11 years. Well, actually very regularly, 11 years. And it's interesting that even 150 years ago, fur traders in Canada noticed that they had a cycle of fox pelts increasing every 11 years. And it was then people looked at it further and they realized there was a peak of rabbit pelts every 11 years, just before the fox pelts increased in abundance. And they figured out that the sunspot activity was causing more growth in the grasses, so the rabbits were eating more, so they were getting caught more by foxes, and then the fur trappers were catching them. So, I mean, how obscure is that? How would you expect that? But that's an example of how the sun impacts the earth in many, many ways. Here's an example of a flare of material being ejected from the sun following lines of magnetism. The sun is a great magnet, as you know from the Druid hymn to the sun. And so we'll look at some of these magnetic lines. Basically, the sun is our source of almost all energy on Earth. So we have energy that powers the Earth coming from the sun, and also stars are the source of matter for our solar system. Matter is actually formed in stars, and I think I'm going to go through that a little bit. So here's an example of the solar radiation hitting the area of the Earth and then bouncing in our atmosphere, radiating diffracting and being absorbed and then re-radiating energy. And that energy then heats the atmosphere, heats the water, and causes, because of its differential amount hitting the surface, it causes cycling of fluids in the ocean and in the atmosphere. So, I mean, obviously the sun's not hitting on the backside here, so it's cooler over here right now, warmer over on the left, and this difference can cause then the winds. If any of you have ever seen been present at a total solar eclipse, you know that a wind starts because the sun being blocked by the moon, the sunlight's not there anymore to heat the atmosphere, and that causes a temperature differential, and we get wind and waves here. So lots and lots of fluids on Earth are moved by differential heat and also gravity effects. The water cycle is caused by the sun. The sun heats the water, and then the water condenses and rains and goes into the ground. And this is a very important aspect of life on planet Earth. If we didn't have this water cycle, we wouldn't live. So the sun is definitely powering the energy of that cycle. Here's an example of getting some of the wind power. Oh, okay. So now I just wanted to talk about how stars help us create matter. They're like factories for elements. Before we talk about that, though, we meaning me, we just need to look at this atom model. Well, actually, yeah, this is an atom of carbon. The blue here is protons. They're positively charged. The red is neutrons. The green is negatively charged electrons. A negative and a positive make a neutron. So a negative electron and a positive proton combine and form a neutron. We're going to look at an example of nuclei being synthesized inside of a colliding neutron star in a moment. But I just wanted to point out all the different elements on Earth were formed inside of stars, and not our star. So it's nice that we have our sun, and it's nice that it's making elements bigger than helium, but the elements in our bodies came from previous stars. Our solar system is not a first generation star system from the beginning of the universe. The material in our body that's heavier than iron, which is Fe, which is, oh gosh, I can't even find it now. It's been too long. Well, isn't it like 50 something? Anyway, any atom that's larger than iron has been created in the fusion reactions of very large stars that are either going supernova or colliding with each other. So if you're wearing a gold wedding ring, that gold came from one of these exploding supernova or colliding neutron stars. As far as scientists know, that's the case. So, I mean, that's quite astounding. These colored blocks here all represent different elements like carbon, nickel, chromium. So right here is kind of the dividing point. Our sun can create elements from hydrogen, helium, neon, argon, manganese, up to iron, but beyond that, it cannot make these. So nickel, copper, the wires in your wall, the copper wires, all of these elements, silver, xenon, all of these were created in those explosions of previous stars or collisions. So, I mean, that's quite astounding right there. So suns create larger elements than small. Then they start with hydrogen, they fuse on up into bigger elements. Here's a cutaway of what a star looks like. On the inside, we have the core where fusion reactions occur. Then there is radiation from that amount of energy coming out. It radiates out. And then there's a convection zone. Then we have the area that's lit up. It's the photosphere that glows. The chromosphere is what we see on the surface. The corona is particles being ejected, and they will often follow magnetic lines there. It's interesting that the light that emerges from the fusion reaction, it's an electromagnetic wave that can be characterized as a particle, as a photon, and it gets, say a photon gets emitted in a fusion reaction. That electromagnetic wave will get absorbed by nearby nuclei, give them a little more energy, and then they'll reduce in energy and radiate out that photon. And then that photon will get caught up by another set of helium atoms, let's say, and it'll absorb and then it will re-radiate. And it does this amazingly for 10,000 years inside this area. It takes 10,000 years for a bit of photon from the core to get emitted out in the photosphere. Now, once it gets out of the sun, it only takes 8 minutes to land on Earth. So that's pretty interesting, I think. Oh, it actually says this right here. Yeah, 10,000 to 100,000 years to go from the center of the sun to the surface. And once on the surface, it takes 8 minutes to get to Earth. So, I mean, that's just mind-blowing to me. And if we think about it, the amount of energy that is being released by the masses here is equivalent to the mass being converted in fusion times the speed of light squared. Now, light travels 186,000 miles per second. So that's a very big number. C is the speed of light. Squared is even bigger. Times a tiny little bit of mass will still give you a huge amount of energy. If we wanted to make a comparison to something we're familiar with, if you think about all the water that's in the San Francisco Bay, okay, think about all of that mass of water. If you plug that mass into the equation, E equals mc squared. Okay, so now there's a big mass, all this water in San Francisco Bay, times the speed of light squared. That is a huge amount of energy, and that's emitted from the sun every second. So that blows my mind. Here is all that energy radiating out into space in all directions. Some of it heads towards Earth in the form of a solar wind. These, the solar wind is actually charged particles coming out of the sun. And, HBB talks about the heartbeat or the rhythm, the pulsation of the sun, the invisible sun, through the solar system, a flow of solar fluid through like a systole and diastole in our solar system. HBB's comments there are obviously referring to something very deeply esoteric. In her description, she's talking about a pulsing out and retrieving back in, coming out and in. It's like the second fundamental in the secret doctrine, that of periodicity. So she would be saying that the invisible sun, the central spiritual sun, follows a periodicity in its outbreathing and inbreathing. the scientific perspective at this point in time is that there's not an in-breathing back, just an out-breathing, basically. The solar wind has charged particles going out away from the sun, and they follow magnetic fluid lines. They get diverted away from hitting the Earth in most spots because of Earth's magnetic field itself, which protects the Earth from this. Now, people who are on, like, the International Space Station have to watch out for solar storms. The solar wind can intensify and move the magnetic field, shove it over sideways, and then cause some danger to them. But you notice here these little green halos. This is where you get southern lights and northern lights, where the charged particles from the sun get diverted down into the magnetic poles and interact with the upper atmosphere and cause atoms to basically tear apart in the upper atmosphere. And as they tear apart, they glow with these beautiful aurora borealis. So here's another image of that happening. The Earth's magnetic field sheltering it from the incredible energy of the sun coming towards it. We have, hopefully this will play, and I don't know how loud it will be for you, so I apologize in advance. I can't control the sound, so if you're wearing earplugs, you might want to be, earbuds, you might be ready to pull it off. The sun is very loud, and here is a probe that came very, very close to the sun, and within that solar wind, within that whole aura of charged particles emitting from the sun, it's not a steady stream. It's actually pulses. Pulses very much like sound waves. You know, in our atmosphere, if you have a compression wave in the atmosphere, you have particles of air that are compressing and creating sound waves that our ears pick up. Well, so also that happens with the sun. The sun is actually emitting these particles that vibrate in a pressure wave, and this is what it sounds like, so it might be loud. So, yeah, that's 150 million kilometers away from the Earth. That's how it sounds. Now, a little farther away from the sun, this is what the audio was picked up from a solar observatory in space. So again, this is the vibration in the ejecta from the sun that come out from the sun all through space. So this is just another image of the sound waves coming out from the sun. One interesting thing I thought I'd share, I've not been taught this by anyone, so this is just me putting together a few ideas. Thought it was interesting, so I thought I'd share. The Earth, you know, it has this internal magnetic field because of its rotation and the fact that it has iron-rich magnetic portions inside of the Earth that are forced to rotate because the orbit of, well, because of the axis of the Earth spinning. So a forced change in magnetic field will cause an electric field. There's basically an electromagnetic field surrounding the Earth, and it's at an angle from the axis of where the Earth orbits the sun. And this is, as you know, well, perhaps you know, here's an image of solstices and equinoxes. The Earth is tilted in its orbit around the sun. This would be an equinox. Here is a summer solstice in the northern hemisphere. Notice the North Pole is getting a lot of sun here. South Pole is not. Here would be the autumn equinox for the North Hemisphere. Here would be the winter solstice for the Northern Hemisphere. The northern axis is facing away from the sun. Think about the magnetic fields here. The magnetic field, maybe I can go back. Yeah, the magnetic field is coming out of the poles. there is a little off from magnetic and true axis, but ignoring that, you still you see that there's this place where the magnetic field lines are coming almost straight out at the poles. So at the solstices, we're taught that in Theosophy, we're taught that at the midpoint between well, December 21st and January 4th, and beyond also, that the astral light is new. Well, I always wondered, what about the southern hemisphere? You know, I mean, they have their summer solstice essentially while the north is having its winter solstice. That's not fair. I mean, why should they be any different? But if you look at the way the earth is tilted, it makes sense because there's magnetic field lines that are open more to the sun at this point geometrically rather than this point. So during the North's summer solstice, the northern axis is facing away from the sun, or sorry, towards the sun. But in this winter solstice, the sun is allowed to get more energy up through the southern pole. And the way the magnetic field lines go in the Earth is they move in at the south and out at the north. So there's more flux of solar radiation coming in this geometric configuration when the north is in its winter solstice. So this means that people in the southern hemisphere during their summer solstice are still gaining the benefit of increased solar radiation coming in through that area. Now, I don't really know what this means esoterically, but it's suggestive. So I suggested it. Yeah. So here is something that might, okay, we don't need to understand this too much, but this is an interesting example of how elements become larger. So basically, two atoms can come together and form larger elements. It's helpful to know that one neutron can be created through a proton and an electron and energy combining. That can form a neutron. We're about to see an example of this. This comes from a technical presentation at Caltech. What they're showing here is a graph with, on the bottom right here are atomic masses. So this is going to be neutrons and protons created when neutron stars collide or when a neutron star combines with a black hole, or when a star goes supernova. So as a point here is illuminated, it means that, oh, it's got, let's say, this much of a atomic mass. I can't see the numbers, but that's okay. It's just generally. Here's the atomic mass, and then here on the left are the number of protons. The number of protons determines the element. So in our sun, we can only have built about this many different kinds of elements with that many different kinds of protons. We're lacking all of these in our sun. So let's just see if we can.
Logarithmic scale, so time
so he's
will
going to
speed
talk
up
a little
as the
bit here.
goes on.
So here
now
you
neutron
see.
capture starts. We're capturing lots of neutrons.
Watch the pattern.
We're making elements up to mass like 300 or so. Now neutrons are exhausted and just everything is decaying back to stability. And so after like a few seconds, sort of, all the neutrons are gone. We're just decaying back to stability, and it's pretty boring from this point on. I'll just run the first few seconds again. And you can actually nicely see how the R process runs up along the closed neutron shell. So here and here. So this is a case where we start out very, very neutron rich. So we start out with an initial electron fraction of 0.01. And you can see we very easy, like we make up mass up to 300. And then these nuclides that are so massive, they're unstable to fission. So either neutron-induced fission or spontaneous fission. And so then they get fissioned, and then the fission products capture neutrons again, go out to a mass of 300, get fission, and then these fission products capture neutrons again. And so we get into this fission cycling. And that's because of this fission cycling, as we'll see, the final abundances always work out to be very robust to the initial sort of parameters of what we get from the outflow.
Okay, so basically he was trying to say to us that atoms with fewer protons are being created to have larger amounts of protons, which we care about because that makes elements larger than iron. And we care about that because when those stars explode or eject their material, then that material is floating around the universe, which eventually pulls together because of gravity and forms a solar system. And the Earth elements that are on the outer part of that disk that begins to form due to gravity, the elements that will become planets are containing the elements that came out of this process right here. So I wanted he had another, he shows an ejecta.
In this tidal tail ejecta because it depends on the relative sizes of the neutron star and the black hole. So if the black hole is too big relative to the neutron star, it will just sort of swallow the neutron star whole. On the other hand, if they're about the same size, then it can disrupt the neutron star very violently and actually produce almost like up to 10% solar mass ejecta.
So ejecta is stuff going out. This is an example of the stuff being spewed throughout the universe.
This is, oops. Okay, so this is a movie by Garcia, and so here the left, this is the neutron star. The black hole, obviously, or the black thing here, obviously, is the black hole. And so now we'll see how the black hole will tear the neutron star apart and actually lead to a lot of ejecta. And so here we only get one tidal tail, but we get a lot of ejecta, and then in the end we get sort of this accretion disk around, which was also important. And then just one more movie to show you the other case where the neutron stars get swallowed whole, and this is a movie by Francois Foucault. And so here we have a mass ratio. The black hole is 6 times as massive as the neutron star, and so it's a very big black hole compared to the neutron star. And the neutron star still gets disrupted, but basically the entire disruption happens inside the event horizon of the black hole, and so there's no ejecta at all, really.
Okay, but usually there is some ejecta, which creates then, as I said, the matter for solar systems to use. Here's an example of some of the magnetic field lines that are traceable by the coronal mass ejections. I don't know if you can really see it here, but they curve back into the sun. And also one interesting thing about the sun is that its magnetic poles do reverse. Here in 2010, you can see the arrows were going from the south out to the north. And then in 2013, it got destabilized. And then in 2017, it reversed back. So coming out of the north and down to the south. So it's a very turbulent, active thing going on in there. A lot of flow of plasma, and this is why, I mean, it's just amazing to think of, 100,000 years for a photon of light from the core to actually get out at the surface. Okay, we looked at that. Oh, okay. We were going to look at the. Okay. As far as time goes, I think I probably should stop soon. There's a lot I could say, which I don't think I should. I don't want to burden you too much. But what does sunlight do on Earth is an interesting thing to consider, how it powers life on Earth through process of photosynthesis here. As you know probably, all light that is used by living beings is processed through photosynthesis in green plants. HBB says, materialistic physical science is honeycombed with metaphysics. The atom is the most metaphysical object in creation. So we can think about metaphysical correlations to what we're discussing here. She does talk about Fohat as the bridge by which the ideas existing in the divine thought are impressed on cosmic substance as the laws of nature. And what this means is that divine ideation will be impressing physical processes and structures. And we can see that imprint in manifestation. So if you're studying something scientifically, there's probably a metaphysical archetype of divine thought behind it. And I just wanted to point out that with the immense amount of electromagnetic radiation hitting the Earth in all different wavelengths, there are a few particular bands that are taken up in photosynthesis and are useful to plants that create energy. There's a simple diagram: sunlight hitting the earth, the leaf, bringing in light energy. In the chloroplasts, carbon dioxide is merged into glucose and lets off water and oxygen. This happens in the leaf of in the very organized structures of chloroplasts. Here's the chloroplast. It can't be emphasized enough that these are very, very well organized structures that have actually a pretty strong chemistry inside of them. If you didn't have these structures, they were just blown apart. Photosynthesis could not happen. This is a picture of Earth where it all happens. The dark green is mostly photosynthetic. The light yellow is not. Basically, we're taking water and carbon dioxide and energy and forming glucose and oxygen. This happens inside very specific structures. I don't want to go too much into this, but it's called photosystem 2. It's a group of proteins and pigments that does all of the work of photosynthesis. It's the only known natural enzyme that uses solar energy to split water into hydrogen and oxygen, these light harvesting complexes. And they go through a very complicated reaction where the light hits it, basically builds it up into a high energy molecule that can be used by all life, really. They're highly organized, as I said, and part of that organization involves the ability for the electrons to move rapidly, like incredibly fast, like beyond how fast I could ever explain. This is where energy changes form from electromagnetic light energy into chemical energy and potentially thermal energy. If you burn a piece of wood, now you have thermal energy. An analogy: Fohat, in its various manifestations, is that mysterious link between mind and matter. Fohat is the animating principle, electrifying every atom into life. It would be a mistake for us to think that electromagnetic radiation is Fohat. Electromagnetic radiation, magnetism, all the forces, gravity, we would think these are like the lowest rung looking up at what is actually divine Fohat. It would be important not to materialize them. The result of photosynthesis is that 1.1 quadrillion pounds of carbon are put together using the sun's energy. That's the estimated biomass of the entire planet, and almost all of that, except for the deep sea vents, came from the sun's energy pulling together carbons in photosynthesis. So, I mean, that's pretty mind-boggling right there. Another interesting thing is that photons of light, if you think about them, they go at the speed of light, right? Well, Einstein's special relativity pointed out to us that as we go faster and faster, time slows down. So for a photon, it would not be experiencing any time. Time would have no meaning. So electromagnetic radiation is timeless in a sense. So one could say light is eternal. So that's interesting right there. I mean, gosh, eternal light impacts these highly organized molecules on Earth that allows them to capture that energy of eternal light and put it into chemical and thermal energy useful for living beings. Let's skip this. So this is a kind of a analogy. Light, to be useful, has to be absorbed by sensitive, well-prepared receptive centers, especially arranged within a larger whole. Now, an analogy of that in our lives, incarnation of sacred teachings requires concentration and openness. We can keep directing the mind towards what is uplifting, purifying, edifying, expansive to the higher mind. We can allow room for the higher mind to have space and manifest. And so these are some other thoughts I could go back to, but I think my time is kind of running short, so I'm going to skip some things here. So the main thing is the sun, HPB would say, is alive. It's a conscious entity on a scale that is just incomprehensible to us. And it has a heartbeat that is intelligent, lawful, and purposive. Great beings live within the invisible spiritual sun. And the vibrations that it is involved in are analogous to our hearts, our planetary cycles, and even atomic vibrations. It's all part of that second fundamental proposition of theosophy, a cosmic rhythm, as above, so below. So I'm going to stop now so that people can discuss. There's more I could say, but I think that's enough. Okay?
Thank you so much, Kim. That was quite a lot.
Yeah.
And it did invite questions. So I'm sure we'll have a very responsive series of questions from folks who are attending. And I see a hand popping up from the podium.
Hi. Wow, Kim, that was magnificent. And I knew it would be. Thank you for that. I was wondering, I'm going to say some numbers, and I would ask you to correct the numbers, but I think they're kind of correct. I'm thinking of the contrast, the relative contrast of speed. Imagine up on the High Sierra someplace that you hiked on maybe 20 years ago or something, and you hadn't had a chance to get up there, and you get up there again, and it's the same. Oh my God, it's the same as it was 20 years ago. You know, that's that same trail, the same rocks, those same plants, same smells. Okay, but then imagine the whole Earth that's going around the sun at 67,000 miles an hour or something like that. This is why we have you here to clean up the numbers, Kim. And then the whole sun is going around the center of the galaxy at 500,000 miles an hour. And the whole bubble of the heliosphere must be going around the whole galaxy at 500,000 miles an hour. Why wouldn't it be? Because it's part of what the sun's doing. And isn't that amazing? Just like you said so many times in your talk, you know, the relativity of peacefulness and tranquility and time to this cosmic, apparently high-speed thing that's going on. I was wondering if you had anything to contemplate on that. And I had another question, but there's going to be other questions. So,
Well, I think that would kind of relate to one of the first diagrams that I showed about how, like, the agathon or the true sun is beyond our conceptions. There's this eternal center within ourselves that is at peace beyond all the, the branches of the wind are the branches of the tree are shaken by the wind, but the trunk remains unmoved, as it says in The Voice in the Silence. So within us, if we can access that transcendent avenue, then there is that stability that's beyond all the turba. And as you say, all the cycling that's going on, all those periodic cycles at many different levels, still there's something beyond it that's the still point of the turning world. And that's what brings us peace and wisdom, and is a source of compassion then too.
And then I had a different question that really does follow through with what you just said. You took pains to say that some of these lower physics are not the same as the higher metaphysics, but they point in that direction, and you can, like, in other words, your electromagnetism was not going to be the same as Fohat, but one, like you had a whole thing on that. Likewise, isn't it interesting about the black hole that the central spiritual sun is called the central invisible sun, and yet black holes are right on the physical plane, at least in the center of this whole thing going on, and some people would say powering the whole thing. But it's invisible, it's in the center, and yet what the Gayatri is talking about must transcend all that. I was wondering if you had anything to say about that.
I'm going to defer that to anybody in the audience who could answer that. I'm sure somebody has a good idea. It's a good question.
Would another way to rephrase that question would be, does the black hole have something to do with what we refer to as the dark sun, or the central invisible sun, in some way being another level of manifestation? It's occurring on a level of manifestation that's visible to us, but it's also pointing to that invisible sun.
Yeah, well, that's why I said it was a mystery to me, because I don't know, because we don't have a black hole in our sun that we know of at all. And at all. Like, there's one known to be in the center of the galaxy. If you look near Sagittarius, that direction, it's over there. But not in our sun, and not in many other stars. So, but HBB says that behind our physical sun, there is that central, invisible, spiritual sun. So I don't think they're the same, black holes and the central spiritual sun. That personally, it doesn't follow to me that that would be true. But what beings live or have their being associated with a black hole is beyond ken for me.
Is it possible that the black hole at the center of our galaxy points to that invisible sun, which is, you could say, the source and origin of all the stars in our galaxy, pointing to that invisible origin of all stars in the galaxy, just as we imagine other galaxies also have black holes, and at some level those are united as well. But just at a galactic level, the black hole being a representation of that invisible sun. Again, not the final, not the only, not the invisible sun that HPB is pointing to, but a kind of representation on our plane of what it, of that originating source. It's a question. It's not an answer. Yeah. So let's turn to Gyro.
Why would the sun change its magnetic field. Does the Earth do that too?
Yes, very good question.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I wondered that myself, and I didn't have time to research it, but I will do very quickly on the internet right now. I mean, I think it has to do with the flow of the plasma within the sun. As the flow of the plasma reorients itself, that would cause the magnetism to change, because the magnetic field is a result of motion of charged particles within the sun. So as the motion of charged particles is forced to change, that would change its magnetic field direction. So that said, I could do a little more research right now really quickly, but that's a good question. And yes, the Earth does reverse its poles over tens of thousands of years. It has been known to do that. It's in the rock record. You can see there are iron atoms which are oriented differently because they had been in an environment that had a different magnetic pole. And again, that's because the magma within the Earth was flowing differently than before. So it drifts. It doesn't always go the same way. And of course, the Earth is forced to spin because it's on an axis and it's spinning. So there's just fluid sloshing around in there differently, you could say. It's not a great answer, but that's what I could say right now.
Okay. Does the podium have another question, or is that?
Oh, I
Uh,
had
Yes,
some
I
comment.
have a
One-
podium question. Oh, what,
Oh,
who's speaking?
podium.
Yeah.
Was that B?
Yeah.
Yeah, B was before me.
Okay.
So I read this theory that the astronomist said that our sun was actually a twin, and the twin of the sun has actually gone out and is slightly outside of our galaxy, but still has an influential gravitational pull, and that is partially might be why some of the outer planets have a really huge elliptical
Orbit.
rotation. So I'm not quite sure if that's might be related. It's not the exact same thing as a dark sun, but who knows? In theory, something related to it. That was just a factoid I wanted to throw out there in case it was somewhat related, because it still has an influence on our galaxy.
Yeah, large bodies that pass by our solar system will have gravitational effects on the outer planets, and it could be that there was a large body that passed by and that did impact the orbital path of the outer planets. I mean, that is one of the theories of why they have those large elliptical orbits. I mean, Jupiter is very massive too, so that can cause. It's not like the sun is the only center. It's kind of shifted a little bit from the center of the sun because Jupiter is so massive. It involves. It's kind of like a little, almost a twin. It's not really. It's too small, but the center of the sun's mass is not the center of the solar system. It's shifted a little bit towards Jupiter. And about the sun having an actual twin, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that.
Oh, you can look it up. I've read a couple of articles about it. It's just that our sun was born of a twin. That it's already
As a double star.
gone out. Yeah. And it's slightly outside of our galaxy, but it still has a gravitational pull that they found evidence for.
So about the sun changing its magnetic field, apparently it's impacted a bit by the sunspots too. I just looked that up really quick. Jitendra?
Yeah, I wanted to say about when the manifestation of a sun takes place, it's called Manavantra, and when there is a end of the solar system, it becomes Pralay, and that's the black hole. Pralay. So the cycle is finished from the beginning, and then it has done this lifespan given to that, and when it destroys itself completely. So there is a periodic system for every sun.
Yeah.
So one of the sun which goes into pralay. Pralay means end of it, and that's a black hole. The black hole that science sees is one of the sun has gone into pralay, end of it.
Well,
They created and then the end. That makes a black hole. And then why we can't see the central sun? Because the central sun is the only sun that is giving light to all the billions of suns that we see, which are the stars at night. Now there is no other light which will pointing towards that central sun. That's why we can't see it. Like a torch pointing at an object. Now from that object, there's no light coming to the torch. So this is why it's invisible. The central sun. Central sun is the only one that is giving out light. So the photograph that the NASA takes about the Milky Way and all that is because of the central sun hitting on the object. And that's why we see that suns and moons and planets and Jupiters and all sort of. So if the light doesn't hit on that object, we cannot see.
That's an interesting way to put it. We certainly have in the teachings of the secret doctrine that the true source of what we call visible light and all manifestation, in fact, is a radiation and then a conscious emanation from sources of energy and light and consciousness, which are completely invisible to what we call the physical senses, and only would become evident to us through the awakening of faculties that we currently only have glimmers of, that we call intuition, but that eventually, at some point, yes, humanity will awaken and be able to witness and see and understand and know that on these invisible planes from which the visible cosmos emerges, apparently. So, podium.
Yes, hello there. This is Ken. I'm going to turn this screen off, and you see me here on the main screen. I wanted to go back a moment, and it's actually echoes with Manvantara and Pralaya, and relates to the concept of Shiva as a destroyer and creator. The idea of the black hole and something called the quasar. So at one point in the history of astronomy, and I'm not sure where the theory is today, there was a concept that these quasi-stellar objects, which are very far away from the Earth, but yet emitting huge amounts of light and particles and energy, are actually the other side of a black hole, which forms a bridge through space-time. So it gets to the idea of layers and layers of reality. So normally we have flat four-dimensional space-time, but if you bend it in a higher dimensional reality, you can get it to touch itself again, which is, I guess, analogous to the idea of the manifested illusory Mayavic world and a manifested world and a noumenal world and the Adita world. So there are multiple layers. And so if this concept of a black hole and a quasar being linked to each other through a bridge, which was called the Einstein-Rosen bridge, a hole through space-time, connecting two parts of space-time. You might say on the black hole side, matter and light are being gravitationally sucked in, if you will, and then the quasar, they're being emitted or thrown out the other side. So that kind of relates to the function of Shiva as a destroyer and a creator, as an analogy, correspondence between modern astronomy science and cosmology and gravitation theory, which is getting modified all the time, and some of these ancient esoteric doctrines we see in some of our writings. I just wanted to throw that out there, but thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, I think the quasar is thought to be the disk of matter around a black hole that's being ripped apart at incredibly high energies, and as that matter is torn apart, it emits pulses of light. So it's the edge of a supermassive black hole, according to modern astronomy. Yeah, I mean, it's just totally mysterious to think of what beings would be involved with that.
Thank you, Ken. Laura.
You touched upon it very well, Kirk and Kim, when you mentioned about it's hard to believe what kind of beings would be involved in that. And your diagram, which is available in the second volume of Isis, that shows the Maya, the illusion, and which is what we're looking at. We're looking at the planes of effects. What we're seeing with our scientific mind, it seems, is their effects. But when we look at that larger circle, and we look at what is beyond that larger circle, all the way up to Brahma, we can see that everything that's on the Mayavic plane, everything that we're talking about, is a result of this aggregate of intelligences working on this invisible side of nature. And there must be a tremendous harmony, as was shown in the one video that you shared with, with the development of those protons, with the energy, that video that you showed. You know, that is a result of something that we cannot see. And I think that this diagram on the macrocosm, microcosm, as well as the diagram on page 200 of The Secret Doctrine, indicates that all of this that we see in this diagram exists in every point of space.
Mm-hmm.
And is not absent from any point of space. And there is where the mystery, I think, is.
Yeah.
That's a wonderful comment, Laura. One of the other analogies, a very striking analogy that HPB gives in the SD is that all the forces identified by science, electromagnetism, electricity, light, heat, etc., gravity, that they are like the sound that the wheel of a carriage makes as it goes down the road. So scientists are hearing that sound. They can identify the sound. They can measure it. They can measure the workings of it to some degree, but they don't see the wheel. They don't see the carriage. They don't see the fellow in the carriage. They don't see the guy who designed the carriage and gave guidance to the fellow who's driving the carriage and telling him where to go, et cetera, et cetera. So that we can certainly, as a very basic affirmation that we can make in studying the SD, that whatever we're seeing on the physical plane is but the seventh level of a whole series of causes that are set in motion on deeper levels and much more vast and ethereal levels of nature, including what we call the sun. So yes, that was a really excellent comment. Thank you. The other question I was going to bring up to Kim, because we have an affirmation of this idea
about the pralay. Pralay is.
Let me just finish this comment.
Hello, can you hear me?
One second, Jitendra.
Okay.
And the Judaism
carry on.
next in line as well. I just wanted to make end my comment with a question, because we also have science identifying the fact that on a cosmic level, that they are only aware of, can measure and identify 5% of the energy and matter of which the cosmos exists, right? That 95% of what is animating things on a cosmic level is invisible to us. And that's why it's referred to as dark energy and dark matter, which one physicist said we might as well call them Tom and Jerry, because we have no idea as to their constitution or what animates them, and or what they are. We don't know what to call them, so we call them black. So I'm wondering if you could comment on that, Kim.
Well, I think it just goes to the agnosticism that good scientists have, that there is a lot that we don't know. I mean, the reason they think dark energy may exist is because of certain aspects of expansion of the universe. But if that is misunderstood, then dark energy might not exist. And dark matter is said to exist because of gravity effects. If we are misunderstanding gravity, then it may not be that dark matter exists. So I think it's sort of a placeholder for the unknown.
Yeah.
That basically, whatever we call it in words, we shouldn't get caught up on those words. The scientists are saying we don't know.
Yeah, but the all of those ideas that we're only seeing 5% is based on measurements that have been identified and repeated over decades, having to do with the recognition of the expansion of the universe, that there is an energy, a vast reservoir of energy, and then that acceleration is not slowing down. In fact, it's increasing. So
Well,
but there is a basis for us
Yes.
making the assumption. It's not a
yes, but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but the scientists also say we don't know. You know,
Yeah.
we're willing to let go of that hypothesis if other evidence comes in counter to it.
Sure.
So given everything we have so far, this is what seems logical, but we're not married to it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Judy.
Yes, well, I just have a very simple question. Given that the secret doctrine says that the sun is a mirror for a much greater spiritual conscious source of light in the universe, can we say this about all the suns in the universe, or is there any way to know this? Because the adepts seem to do not know much more than what is in our solar system.
Yeah.
Fred.
Well, that's a good question. If we say as above, so below, correspondence throughout the universe, it would be logical to suspect that that would be the case. But again, if adepts don't know, then what are we doing? I think the meaning of it all is basically shown in this William Wordsworth poem. That basically, I could read it as an end if you want for the session, but basically that there's something transcendent within us that could inspire us for greater love.
Why don't you do that, Kim, to close the meeting?
Okay, so this is a section of the poem, a bigger poem from William Wordsworth. He looked, ocean and earth, the solid frame of earth, and ocean's liquid mass in gladness lay beneath him. Far and wide the clouds were touched, and in their silent faces could he read unutterable love. Sound needed none, nor any voice of joy. His spirit drank the spectacle. Sensation, soul, and form all melted into him. They swallowed up his animal being. In them did he live, and by them did he live. They were his life. In such access of mind, in such high hour of visitation from the living God, thought was not. In enjoyment it expired. No thanks he breathed, he proffered no request. Wrapped into still communion that transcends the imperfect offices of prayer and praise, his mind was a thanksgiving to the power that made him. It was blessedness and love.
Thanks, everyone, for attending, for your attention and questions and comments. And thank you so much, Kim. Give us a lot of food for thought and a rich perspective from the scientific viewpoint.